I will now read Chapter 2, which does have some tables in it that I will put in front of the camera. So be ready to look at those if you would like to see them. Chapter 2, small p declined before vacations were enforced. In quotes, it says, "To mistake inferences or axioms for facts has been a curse of science," unquote, by Sir Clifford Allbutt in Nature. The simple fact that we have less small p now than we did 200 years ago does not in any degree prove that vacations cause this decline, although the promoters of vacations have taken upon themselves the full credit for this improvement. The most noticeable decrease in small p and other zymotic diseases began with the sanitation reforms just prior to 1800s and the improvement in nutrition brought about by such health crusaders as Trail, Graham, and Jennings around 1840. This sanitation and health improvement program included 1. Sewage disposal, 2. Cleaning of streets, backyards, stables, etc., 3. Improvement of roads so that fresh vegetables, milk, and other vital foods could be transported rapidly to the cities and distributed while still fresh. 4. The water supply was improved and protected from contamination. 5. Housing projects were built out in the suburbs to relieve congestion of population in the cities. The nutritional teachings stress natural whole grain bread instead of white bread, fresh fruits and vegetables free from salt, sugar, chemicals, and other harmful preservatives, and the rejection of coffee, tea, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and other drastic poisons. Meat and other low-grade proteins were denounced in favor of nuts, beans, and other such proteins with more health value and less toxic effects. The age-old, quote-unquote, terror diseases, such as plague, Black Death, cholera, etc., that were previously believed to be contagious, responded at once to this health program and soon declined to the vanishing point in countries that adopted the sanitation and nutrition improvements. They are diseases of nutritional deficiency and imbalance just the same as all other diseases. A glance at the following table of official statistics from England and Wales shows us how small p deaths declined only after the people began their opposition to the vacation law and an ever-increasing number refused to be vacationed. Chart showing decrease in small p deaths after decline of vacation. And it says the period, and then the next number is percentage of births vacationed, and then the last column is small p deaths. So you can see here the first period, 1872 to 1881, the percentage of births vacationed was 96.5, and the deaths were 3,708.3. 1882 to 1891, percentage vacationed were 82.1, and the deaths were 933.0. 1892 to 1901, 67.9% of births were vacationed. The deaths were 436.5. 1902 to 1911, the percentage of births vacationed 67.6, with the death rate 395.3. 1912 to 1921, only 42.3 percentage of births were vacationed, and a 12.2% death rate. And then at the top of the next page, we have 1922 to 1931, 43.1% vacationed at birth, with a 25.0 death rate. I guess these aren't death rates. These are the actual number of deaths, I think. And then the next one is 1932 to 1941, 39.9 and 1.4. Here we see that at the time when nearly all, or 96.5%, of the babies were vacationed, smallpox caused almost 4,000 deaths in that 10-year period. But when the vacations were resisted until only 39% would submit to it, the death rate dropped down to only 1.4 cases. Before the passage of England's compulsory vacation law in 1853, the highest authentic small p death rate was only 2,000 for any 2-year period. even during their most serious small p epidemics, whereas after almost 20 years of compulsory vacation, there occurred the most devastating scourge of small p in 1870 to 1871 that the world has ever known. It took 23,062 lives in England and Wales and spread over Europe and all the countries where vacations and inoculation had been practiced on a large scale. After that, vacation laws were enforced even more rigidly until the people began to notice that small p was not decreasing by this practice but continued to ravage the homes of the vacationed. During the same epidemic in Germany, 124,948 people died of small p. All had been vacationed, according to their carefully kept records. Quote, in Berlin alone, no less than 17,038 persons had small p after vacation, and 2,884 of them died, end quote. In Sheffield, England, where 97% of her 200,000 inhabitants had been thoroughly and frequently vacationed for many years, a small p epidemic swept the city in 1887 that caused 7,101 cases and 648 deaths. Preceding this, the large manufacturing towns of Leicester, England, which had been even more thoroughly vacationed up to the time of the 1870 epidemic, was the hardest hit of all the communities with over 3,500 deaths per million in the first year of the epidemic. This completely destroyed their faith in vacation, and the rich and poor alike rejected it and adopted sanitation, with the result that small p epidemics were soon eliminated from the city. Statements of health officials regarding vacation small p. Sir Thomas Chambers, QCMP, recorder of the City of London, said, I find that of the 155 persons admitted to the small p hospital in the parish of St. James, Piccadilly, 145 had been vacationed. In Marylebone Hospital, 92% of the small p cases had been vacationed. Marston's report of Highgate Hospital for 1871 states that, quote, of the 950 cases of small p, 870 or 90% of the whole number of patients had been vacationed. At Hempstead Hospital, up to May 13, 1884, out of 2,965 admissions for small p, 2,347 had been vacationed. After these vacation epidemics, more and more people refused to comply with the unjust vacation laws, and as a result of this and the improvements in sanitation and nutrition, small p took a drop and continued to decline until it is rarely seen at the present time. In 1942, one case of small p at Swindon, Britain, resulted in the vacation of a large number of people. Only 3 cases of small p occurred, and these all recovered, but 12 vacation individuals died from inflammation of the brain. This is a common after effect of vacation. In the same year, Edinburgh, Scotland, 8 people died of small p, 6 of which had been vacationed, while 10 died from the effects of the vacation. I would not go so far as to say that vacation has never saved a person from small p. It is a matter of record that thousands of the victims of this superstitious rite have been saved from small p by the immunizing potency of death. But it is a fact that the official statistics of England and Wales show unmistakably that, while vacation has killed 10 times more people than small p, there has been a decrease in small p concomitant with a decrease in vacation. It might be appropriately asked, in the words of the Vacation Inquirer, London, February 1947, how could an operation that was declining be responsible for the extermination of small p? And that's from Vacation and Serum Evils, page 23 by Dr. H.M. Shelton. So that's all the end of that quote, that man being quoted. Unvacationed diseases declined faster than vacationed small p. Records in all countries show that the so-called contagious diseases declined quite rapidly with the introduction of sanitation and nutrition reforms, with the exception of small p and diphtheria, which were kept active by vacation in a large number of authenticated cases. The following condensed record from various countries give a cross-section of the available evidence that bears out this point. Report from British India. In 1929, while India was still under British rule with its compulsory vacation laws, the League of Nations Health League referred to India as, quote, the greatest center of small p in the world today, unquote. The records showed that in the large cities where vacation enforcement was most rigid, quote, the smallpox death rate has been generally far greater than for the country as a whole, unquote, where complete enforcement is not possible. The report of the League of Nations Health Division for October 1953 reluctantly admits vacation is not all it ought to be when it says in part, in spite of the great efforts made by the health authorities in promoting vacation, small p is not on the point of extinction. After the limited health improvement programs, we find that the plagues and scourges all decline noticeably except small p and respiratory diseases, in parentheses, tuberculosis, which is a common after effect of vacation. Average death rate from fevers and other causes per 1,000 of the population. So here it is, per 1,000 of the population. Let's see if I can get this further away so you can see it. Looks like diseases in India, 10 years, 1898 to 1907 is the first column. Second column is 16 years, 1921 to 1930. So fevers, malaria, etc. is 19.44 up until 1907, and then 15.51 between 1921 and 1930. Plague is 2.23, and then later 0.53. Cholera is 1.66, and later 1.02. Dysentery, diarrhea, 1.28, later 0.09. Dysentery, diarrhea, 1.28, and later, oh, I said that one. Small p, 0.37, and later it was 0.30. Other causes, 7.79, later it was 6.31. Respiratory disease, 0.85, later 1.43. That was tuberculosis in parentheses. All causes, 33.62, and later 26.00. Edward Jenner had promised that vacations would wipe out instead all other diseases, even the most persistent and deadly, more rapidly without any serums than did small p with its repeated vacations. Around 1900, after the improvements in health due to sanitation and nutrition had had time to be weighed against that of vacation, most of the people of England began to refuse vacation, which resulted in a greater decline in small p. But in certain cities of India, the British government was still able to keep up rigid enforcement. The following chart shows the high smallpox death rate in 3 of these Indian cities as compared to the decreased death rate in London after the cleanup, in parentheses, health campaign. Average annual small p death rate per million people. Here's another table. So between 1888 and 1897, Bombay was 424, Calcutta 600, Madras 100, London 10.0. 1898 to 1907, Bombay 1,000, Calcutta 1,000, Madras 307, London 35. 1908 to 1917, Bombay 600, Calcutta 900, Madras 300, London 0.3. 1918 to 1927, Bombay 524, Calcutta 1,242, Madras 663, and London 0.8. And 1928 to 1933, Bombay 866, Calcutta 1,201, Madras 521, and London 1.23. World's worst record in Mexico. Although India was reported by the League of Nations as the greatest center of small p in the world in 1929, it has improved since gaining its freedom from Britain and relaxing its vacation enforcement program. This leaves the over-vacation country of Mexico holding the dubious honor as the world's worst small p center. The following chart shows the comparison between Mexico with its sparse population of 16,500,000, 1930 figures approximately, and British India with its dense, congested population, 300 million approximately. In spite of the disease breeding conditions of India's cities with inadequate sanitation, nutrition, and housing facilities, and the polluted water, lack of sewers, extreme heat, etc., the small p death rate is far lower than that of completely vacation Mexico. And then here's another chart, first page. So 1922, deaths 11,966, death rate 844. That was Mexico, whereas in British India, its deaths 40,836 and the death rate 169. 1923, 13,074 deaths in Mexico. The death rate is 903. Deaths in British India, 44,084. British India death rate 183. 1924, deaths in Mexico, 11,964. Death rate is 878. Deaths, 55,380. And British India death rate 229. And this goes on. On the next page, the chart goes on. I think I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see the two columns on the left are Mexico. Or, I'm sorry, so there's the years, and then the columns in Mexico. And then those are the two Mexico columns, and then here's the columns for India. So you can see that the rates in India are way higher in those years. This black record could exist only in a country where vacation laws are rigidly enforced. The Mexican law prescribes one, children must be vacationed within 4 months of birth. 2, one compulsory vacation and one compulsory re-vacation for all inhabitants within the time limits and in the manner and under the conditions specified by the Public Health Council. Number 3, all persons are obliged to have themselves re-vacationed at least once every 5 years and may be required to do so more frequently whenever the health authorities so determine. Number 4, the Army Medical Service vacations all soldiers. Employees in commercial, industrial, etc. establishments must have all persons in their employ vacationed within the time limits laid down. In spite of the constant recurrence of smallpox epidemics cultivated by vacations, this medical dictatorship continues to rule with an iron hand. If the Mexicans were not a hardy people by nature, they would have been destroyed by this time, reduced to imbecility by this continuous blood poisoning practice. In Jenner's day, small p was practically unknown in Mexico, for which he promptly claimed the credit. In 1811, Jenner wrote to Dr. Lettson as follows: "For the great and grand effects of vacation, the eye must quit this little spot, England, and survey it among the other European countries, and still more particularly among the vast empires of Asia and America. In Mexico and Peru, the disease is nearly extinct." Jenner didn't wait around to see the results of his terrible invention. Even he admits that small p was almost unknown when he started his work of destruction. Today, vacation has so intensified the development of small p that all vacation Mexicans